Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health Radio and TV. I'm your host, Sara Banta. I'm a health coach, natural supplement expert, and a busy mom of three. Today, my guest will be talking about how keto helps with strength training results. With the benefits of keto, you will see an improvement not only physically, but mentally and spiritually, whether it's overcoming anxiety, depression, losing weight, or detoxing your body in the proper way, and even increasing that level of frequency in life. You need a strong physical foundation of health in order to gain the willpower to make the bigger changes in your life. If you're new to following me, I specialize in helping you get there. You can find my health articles, my cutting edge natural supplements, devices, and protocols at sarabantahealth.com. My company is the sponsor of the show, so as you support my website, I'm able to bring you more cutting edge content and guests to the show. So like I mentioned, we are going to be diving into the benefits of keto, but I wanted to talk about some tools that you can use to maximize your results, making it easier to not only strength train, but reverse hormonal decline, improve energy, and yes, reverse aging. The goal is to improve that mitochondrial health and increase energy at the cellular level. And with that, we need to attack insulin resistance, reduce toxicity, improve that mitochondrial health and that energy. So first, accelerated keto. This flips you into fat burning within 30 minutes and your body taps into its own fat stores for energy right away. You feel great physically and mentally right away and think, okay, now I can do this in the morning. Go work out and get your workout in and strength train fasted, and you will see a boost in that energy and a boost in your results. There are additional ingredients in the accelerated keto that break down the saturated fats into unsaturated fats. And why is this good? Because it's easier for the body to utilize and easier for the body to convert into ketones. When you're fasting, the body fat's more readily available. It's going to increase those ketones and increase autophagy. And autophagy is that cleanup mechanism in your body. Because of this property, it is able to defat the liver. And you know I love my liver. If your liver is not working, then your whole body's going to go downhill. The more a person's liver is defatted and unclogged, the easier it is for it to function, including breaking down those fat molecules, also including converting the thyroid hormones from T4 into the active hormone T3. And as that's functioning better, the thyroid works better, increasing metabolism, mitochondria, and energy further. Next, this is really important for our discussion today. Accelerated keto also has HMB, which prevents muscle wasting. With more healthy muscle tissue, you have more mitochondria and more ATP. You and I might not be bodybuilders, but that muscle is expensive and we need it as we age. It keeps us alive longer. And that HMB in the accelerated keto is going to help prevent muscle wasting. Additionally, there's some other ingredients that just turn up the fire on the digestion and also increase the ketone production. Next is acceleradine. Acceleradine iodine. Iodine is needed in all 100 trillion cells of your body. And acceleradine is the only monoatomic, one molecule, 100% bioavailable iodine that can be absorbed in all cells in the body. Other iodines, they have to be broken apart to be used and really only have about 10 to 20% absorption. And a lot of the iodine comes from toxic sources. Acceleradine is further enhanced with scalar frequencies to detox the cells from heavy metals, graphene oxide, and radiation, and no other iodine incorporates these healing scalar frequencies. With that, you've got the accelerated ancient salt, and it is essential, especially when you're on keto, especially when you're fasting, even just a low carb diet, you need those electrolytes. And accelerated ancient salt has over 62 minerals and it has a strongly negative charge to it to help pull out the positively charged toxins, parasites, and undigested fats. Sometimes we need to eat a lot of fat to stay on keto, right? But if your gallbladder and your liver are backed up, you might get nauseous from that fat. The accelerated salt helps with nausea. You just put a little bit on your tongue, put it in your water, especially if you're going to work out. You want to have it in your water or take it before you do your workout. It is actually going to give you energy. Your energy doesn't come from food necessarily. It comes from your hydration, and hydration at the cellular level. It is also scalar charged to further enhance its frequency, and it reorganizes the DNA. Yes, it actually does that. And now, as of last week, accelerated thyroid is here. I have spent thousands of dollars on individual ingredients to support my thyroid, and that's why we created this formula. It includes 2 natural thyroid formulas that synergize their effectiveness and then, of course, save you money, but it is also scalar enhanced. It has frequencies to enhance the general health of the thyroid, but also to neutralize toxins found in the thyroid, such as the chlorine, fluoride, mercury, and other metals, and neutralizes radiation and nuclear fallout. There is not any other thyroid supplement that incorporates those scalar frequencies. And soon it's coming, Cogniblast. It is a cutting edge natural brain enhancement that will help with cognition, focus, increased ATP production, increased learning speed, and it will actually help with lifespan, motivation, prevent Alzheimer's and dementia. So it's not just good for that brain energy short term, like a lot of the drugs are, but it actually helps with long-term benefits. I give more tips and tools through my free group coaching. You can join with the link below on Telegram, or email me through the website, sarabantahealth.com. And the difference between me and any other group coaching is I provide the most cutting edge frequency enhanced supplements that work synergistically with each other, and your body doesn't experience those flu-like symptoms. Leave a comment below if you're interested, or check it out on the website. Now to the good stuff. Robert Sikes is a lifetime natural competitive bodybuilder. He started training as a junior in high school, weighing a whopping 115 pounds. You sound like my daughter, who's trying to bulk right now for rowing. In the beginning, he followed traditional bro dieting wisdom that consisted of eating 6 or 7 meals a day, filled with carbohydrates and very high protein. And this led to a downward spiral of health issues, including disordered eating, which I want to get into. Fast forward to learning the benefits of keto, and he has dedicated his life to learning and teaching others to benefit. The following well-formulated ketogenic lifestyle, and also came out with the Keto Brick, a 1,000 calorie ketogenic performance meal. Welcome, Robert. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here chatting with you.
I am too. I mean, it's so funny as you talk about eating 6 or 7 meals a day, feeling like you need to keep it going, and the carbs for working out. That was my mindset. Mm-hmm. And I remember doing it. But what I noticed in my own body was, as I was eating the carbs, if I ran out of them because I hadn't flipped into ketosis, that my body would start eating away at my muscles, because it goes from sugar, glucose straight into muscles. It doesn't know how to tap into that fat store. So anyways, I love how that switch to keto really is benefiting those in the gym. But before we get going, can you tell us your story? I mean, it's just so inspiring, and especially the disordered eating part. Most people think that's only for women. Mm-hmm. But in the bodybuilding, obviously you were looking to, there's some vanity to it. There's some, the body composition. Will you tell us your story?
Yeah, so I started bodybuilding as a junior in high school. And like you mentioned in the intro, I was very light. I was 115 pounds. I think I was just honestly lacking confidence in my identity. And I looked to bodybuilding as a way to build that confidence, and didn't have a clue what I was doing. I followed the traditional bro dieting approach of eating those 6 or 7 meals a day, high carbs, high protein, relatively low fat. And I tried to just bulk up, and the whole philosophy back then was you got to eat big to get big. So I was eating 6,000 plus calories a day, all ultra processed, high carbohydrate foods. And I bulked up to about 230 pounds, and I'm only 5'7", so that's not a good look on me. And I did my first show. I lost 80 pounds in 12 weeks, which was not something I would recommend to anybody. Lost a lot of muscle in that process, and I won the show, but that was kind of the start of my disordered eating. After the show was over, we all went out to eat, celebrate at Red Lobster. I ate everything in sight, put on 20 pounds in 24 hours, and pretty much threw my identity away. Like I had wrapped my identity up in the bodybuilding endeavors, and I felt like I just threw it away in an instant. And that was pretty much the beginning of the downward spiral with the binging, purging cycles. Did that for several years, competed several more times. And then I kind of stumbled upon keto by accident when I was just playing around with my diet to find things that were more sustainable, and started doing that about 8 years ago, before keto was really popularized, before there was any books or podcasts out on the subject. And it worked exceedingly well for me. I was able to recover from those disordered eating tendencies, and I haven't really looked back since. I've just been trying to optimize my ketogenic approach from a lifestyle standpoint ever since I discovered it 8 years ago.
It's amazing. When you first discovered keto for me, it was after a car accident, and I wasn't really looking to put on weight, lose weight, or anything like that. But my brain, I had headaches, I had anxiety, I had depression after that car accident. And when I started keto, and you were one of the first people I started listening to, it was like my brain was healing, and it calmed me down. And I thought, for no other reason, I'm just getting my brain back. And my brain today works better than it did when I was in college because of that. And people don't realize it's not just about the physique, but it's also about the brain health. But
the brain health, I mean, honestly, like I didn't even plan to compete with the ketogenic approach when I started it. I just was, hell-bent on sticking with it because I got my brain back, because I was able to improve my relationship with food. And all of that was worth it enough for me to stick with the diet. The fact that it also worked well from a bodybuilding standpoint was a surprise to me, but certainly a welcome surprise, because I'd never been able to get that lean either. So I was getting the benefits from a psychological standpoint, but also from a physiological standpoint.
so now on keto, because I've heard other bodybuilders talk about how when they were on a carbohydrate diet, that they would bulk and cut, and then also dehydrate themselves before competition day. When you're on keto, you naturally are not retaining as much water. Do you still need to bulk and cut for competitions?
Yeah, so this is a tricky subject. I definitely do recommend having a defined building phase and a defined cutting phase. I feel like if you're trying to optimize for building muscle tissue, you need to be in somewhat of a caloric surplus to add more tissue to your frame. Some of that's going to be body fat, some of that's going to be lean tissue. If you're trying to optimize for fat loss, you ideally need to be in a caloric deficit. That said, I don't have to go near as broad with those building and cutting swings. Like I typically stay within about 20 pounds of stage weight now, so I'll never have to lose 80 pounds in 12 weeks again, which is a good thing. Like I'm about 180 now roughly, and I'll compete at 160. So I'll do that prep over the course of 4 to 6 months, depending on what timeline I want to work with. So I have much less weight to lose, so I stay much leaner and healthier year round. And I don't have to change my wardrobe every time, which is also a plus.
Right. Well, can we talk about the misconception that keto does not build muscles or prevents muscle growth?
Yeah, I get this pushback quite a bit from the conventional nutrition space within the sport of bodybuilding. I think a lot of that comes to just dogmatic thinking, and people in that space have looked towards carbohydrates for energy. They look to spiking insulin as a growth agent, and insulin is an extreme growth agent. It causes muscle tissue to grow, it causes fat tissue to grow, it causes cancer cell growth to grow. But when it comes to building muscle, the main pillars that you want to hit is making sure you're in a caloric surplus, making sure you're consuming enough protein to build and repair muscle tissue, and to elicit enough of a training stimulus to give your body reason to grow in the first place. All of those boxes being checked, you'll have muscle protein synthesis take place, and you'll build more tissue in the complete absence of carbohydrates.
So what does that look like during a day? When are you eating your protein? When are you eating your macros? And how much protein do you recommend?
So I'm currently eating about 2 meals a day, sometimes 3 meals a day. I don't eat the 6 or 7 meals a day anymore. When I get into a deficit, I'll sometimes transition to an OMAD approach. So basically just 1 meal a day. But in a building phase, I'm trying to optimize for muscle growth. I'll have 2 or 3 meals a day so that I'm having at least, 30 or 40 grams of protein with ample leucine and, multiple times throughout the day, 2 or 3 times, like I said. If you're getting that sporadically throughout the day, then you're going to be able to stimulate muscle protein synthesis more than once, which is advantageous from a muscle building standpoint. As far as protein amounts and recommendations, when in a building phase, a general good rule of thumb is, 1 gram of protein per pound of body weights or per pound of lean mass for someone that is overweight would be a pretty good rough recommendation. Like I said, I'm currently 180 pounds, and at the moment I'm consuming anywhere between 180 and 200 grams of protein a day.
And where are you getting your protein from? Is it all whole food based? Is it from, protein bars? I mean, you've got your Keto Brick. Also, what about protein shakes? Are you a believer in those? And there's a lot of controversy about different protein shakes, and are they actually beneficial?
I think I probably burned myself out on protein shakes in my prior bro bodybuilding days. I haven't had a protein shake in years. I'll have the Keto Brick. There's about 30 grams of protein in each Keto Brick flavor. But I always encourage all of my clients, all the people that follow me, to prioritize whole, nutrient-dense, single ingredient sources of food. So most of my protein is coming from ground beef. I also hunt quite a bit, so venison makes up a pretty good portion of my protein requirements. Elk also makes up a pretty good portion, some dairy, some, whole fat yogurt, but honestly, mostly just animal sourced protein.
Let's talk about the brick.
Yeah.
Where do you put this into your daily routine? Do you eat it all at once? I mean, for me, thinking about 1,000 calories in a bar sounds like I wouldn't be able to eat the whole thing at once, but I'm also a female, so it might be a little different.
Yeah, so the brick was never even meant to be a product. It was something that I designed out of my own need back in my 2017 competition prep, because there wasn't any products in the market at the time, and I just wanted to streamline my meal prep for my competition. So I set out to design this ketogenic high-fat bar, and the brick was born. It's more so a fat bar than it is a protein bar. I mean, there is 30 grams of protein in there, but there's like 90 grams of dietary fat, most of which is coming from cacao butter, so really high in stearic acid. And I'll typically incorporate that with my first meal. So like right now, for instance, I'm training between 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock in the morning, and my first meal is after that training session. And that first meal usually consists of one whole keto brick and like a can of sardines and some whole eggs. So that's my first meal, and then I'll have a second or third meal later in the day. But many people will cut it in half. They'll cut it into thirds. They'll just kind of partition it based off of their macronutrient needs. But the benefit to it is simply in streamlining the types of dietary fat that you have access to. It's shelf stable. It's convenient. So it's mostly just a convenience factor.
Yeah. A lot of people complain that they can't eat too much fat at one time. I believe that a lot of it is because their livers are backed up. But saying that, there are different fats that are more easily digested. Is that why you chose that type of fat for the brick?
Yeah. So the cacao butter, I mean, that is the highest source of stearic acid of all the fats out there. That's one of the reasons it's so shelf stable. Stearic acid has an 18-chain carbon bond, so it's going to be more resilient to temperature. So honestly, it has a higher melting point than room temperature. Most fat bombs are going to melt, in your hand, whereas the brick is not. So that's a benefit. But it also is pretty easily digested and absorbed and assimilated by the body. Because that longer carbon chain, it takes a little bit longer to digest. It's not like a medium chain triglyceride that's very fast acting, so it has that delayed response, so to speak. And I don't really have any issues with people having GI distress from it. Like if you were to consume 90 calories or 90 grams worth of dietary fat from an oil-based substance, you're probably going to have some GI distress. Whereas with the brick, you can have a whole brick in a sitting, and most people don't really experience any GI distress whatsoever.
So I get a lot of questions about, well, if I'm exercising, can I eat more carbs on my ketogenic diet? What do you say to your clients?
You could certainly tolerate, you probably have a higher carbohydrate threshold if you are training more, because you're going to be burning through that glucose more efficiently. You'll likely be more insulin sensitive as a result of that weight training. However, I would argue rather than seeing what you're able to get away with, see what you can optimize for. So I could probably consume 150 grams of total carbs a day and still be in ketosis, but I don't feel like that would optimize my ketogenic endeavors. So I keep my total carbs very low. So I've basically just reframed my thinking again towards, rather than looking at what I can get away with, more so just to what can I optimize for.
So when you're changing, when you're bulking or cutting, are you just changing your protein and fat intake and keeping your carbs at the same level? Both.
Yeah. So my total carbs, I mean, in a building phase, I'm typically consuming between 3,000 and 4,000 calories a day. So my trace carbs will add up just as a result of eating more food in general, especially if I'm eating stuff like, a 100% or a full fat yogurt. There's some carbs in that, for instance. So even with that higher caloric intake, though, my total carbs are normally south of about 30 grams of total carbs a day. And then when I'm in a cutting phase, my total carbs, since I'm consuming less total calories, those total carbs drop to, 10, 15, 20, usually tops. But I am manipulating my protein intake, my fat intake, and my overall caloric intake throughout the course of a cutting phase.
I know for me, that protein, the animal meat where it comes with the fat and the protein together, the way nature intended, my body just soaks it up and my muscles feel good. My brain feels good. And I tell people, when you sit down, eat your protein first, and you're not going to even want the carbs because your brain says, okay, I'm getting the good nutrition for my brain and body. So anyway, I want to talk about how does keto essentially help with the strength training? How does it, whereas if you were doing the 6 to 7 meals a day of high carbs, where is that different? What's going on in the body with the mechanism to help with the strength training?
Yeah. So before, I mean, all that aside, I do keto mostly from a sustainability factor. Like I feel better mentally and physically. So like all of that is reason enough for me to do it. But when you look at it simply from a biological standpoint, like what is happening to the body once you become fat adapted? For one, with your energy, you have a much larger fuel reserve to tap into. So if you're relying on carbohydrates and glucose as your primary fuel source, you've only got what your body's able to store in the muscle and the liver, which is a pretty small reserve. Whereas even a skinny individual has, quite a bit of dietary fats or quite a bit of adipose tissue that their body can then tap into as energy if they are fat adapted and able to utilize that. So from an energy standpoint, there's a benefit there. From a training standpoint, you have a higher lactic acid threshold once you become fat adapted. As you become fat adapted, you have more, you have more ketone bodies throughout your body circulating in your blood that need to be transported to and from your tissue. And as a result, your body upregulates these MCT transporters that also shuttle pyruvate and lactic acid. So your lactic threshold is elevated, which typically allows people to train with more frequency and have, a lot of people, they'll train with a carbohydrate approach and they'll hit this lactic acid wall. They'll have that burn sensation and they have to cut the training short. Since I've been fat adapted, I haven't really had that issue because I'm able to clear that lactate more efficiently. So I'm able to train more frequently, and increased training frequency and intensity obviously is going to bode well for adding more muscle tissue. So that's a benefit as well. And honestly, just the anti-inflammatory effect of it. When I was eating a bunch of carbohydrates, my joints would ail me a lot more. I'd have issues with my knees after squats. I wouldn't be able to squat for a week or so. Now, due to the anti-inflammatory nature of not having the highly processed carbohydrates and sugars, but also the anti-inflammatory aspect of ketone bodies themselves, I'm able to train more frequently simply because I feel better. And again, that increased training frequency allows for, more intense, more productive training sessions.
I noticed the same thing. Do you use any supplements? Do you use creatine? Do you use electrolytes? Or what is obviously you're not juicing, but what natural supplements do you use, if any?
Honestly, I keep my supplementation pretty minimal. The only thing I really take is creatine, which I half the time forget to take it. Some people notice as significant difference with creatine. I am not one of those people. I can't feel a difference. There's a lot of studies that showcase the benefits of creatine, but it's going to be very minuscule and it's going to be compounded over years. So I take it for that reason when I remember to take it. But electrolytes for sure. I mean, sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, having those dialed in and in check is going to be crucial. I'll manipulate electrolytes when I'm peaking for a competition. I'll manipulate electrolytes around my training window. That impacts my sleep. That impacts my cognitive abilities. So making sure you're getting ample sodium and potassium is crucial for sure.
Yeah, I notice a huge difference. Just putting a little salt on my tongue, it's like, oh, okay, there's my energy. I've heard you talk about reverse dieting, and people don't, everyone's really familiar with dieting, obviously, and cutting and losing weight. And there are a lot of women listening in the audience that aren't bodybuilders, but just want to build muscle, be strong, but they're afraid to get big. And I want to get into your wife in a little bit, but can you explain what reverse dieting is and how to do it properly?
Yeah, so reverse dieting is incredibly important for everybody, whether they're bodybuilders or not. And reverse dieting is simply the reverse of dieting. So if dieting is defined as dropping calories, losing body fat, losing weight, and reducing your intake, reverse dieting is the opposite of that. So basically, strategically increasing your total caloric intake. We are very adaptable beings. So as you drop calories, our metabolism adapts accordingly and down regulates to basically compensate for that lowered intake. The problem is that many people chronically restrict their intake to the point where they're consuming just minuscule amounts of food, like sub 1,000 calories day after day after day, month after month, year after year. And that has a drastic down regulatory effect on their metabolic rate. By reverse dieting strategically and actually increasing their intake, they help upregulate that metabolism, which is going to have a benefit toward their hormones. It's going to have a benefit towards building more muscle tissue. And if you're eating more, as you would in a reverse diet, you're going to be able to put on more muscle tissue. And the more muscle tissue you have, the higher your metabolic rate is going to be anyways. So you're going to be able to be more insulin sensitive. You're going to be able to lose body fat more efficiently the next time you do transition into a cutting phase. So having a reverse diet to kind of counterbalance the effects of a diet is crucial.
I can speak to that myself because I'm 47, so I'm a little older than you. And hormonally, it is very difficult to keep on the muscle mass like it was when I was in my 20s and 30s. And I've noticed that I'm having to work harder for my muscle mass. With that being said, I've increased my amount of protein I'm eating. I probably eat 24 to maybe even 30 ounces of animal protein on a daily basis. And what I'm noticing is that my metabolism is going up. And so just as you were talking about, your body is smart. If it knows that you're in plenty, it's going to ramp up the metabolism. And if it knows that you are in the dire straits, it's going to go for survival. And it's going to use that muscle protein, the muscle on your body, and eat away at it, right? So it's very for men and women, especially as we get older. My girls are athletes. They're 16 and 18. They don't need as much protein as I do because their protein synthesis is much more efficient than when you get into your 40s, 50s, and 60s. So we actually have to eat more protein as we get older. And it's one of those, it's my favorite macro because it tastes good, number one, but it makes your brain feel good, your body feel good. It's not going to bulk you and make you look large and put on a whole bunch of ugly weight, but it's going to put on that great, sexy muscle that is also going to help with longevity and has so many other benefits. So
yeah. There's so many benefits to eating ample protein, ample fat, ample calories, especially as you age, like you're saying. I mean, I see so many people in my own family, they don't eat enough food, and you just see them waste away. Like they become very catabolic. Their body starts tapping into its own stored muscle and stored fat, and just losing that lean mass in a very unhealthy manner. So the more you can do to counteract that, to consume enough protein, consume enough calories, enough fat, and then also to demand your body need that muscle tissue still. One of the best things that anybody can do to preserve lean mass is to continue to train with progressive overload so that you're able to continue demanding that lean tissue to be there, because protein, or muscle tissue rather, is very metabolically demanding. And if you're not using it, your body's going to try and find reasons to get rid of it. So if you're continuing to demand of it, you're more likely going to keep that.
Right. I am a huge believer and just a proponent. I tell my girls all the time, I'm like, build up that strong, lean mass now when
Mhm.
when you've got the hormones and the youth to encourage it. And then that will make it easier to keep as you get older. Robert, let's talk about your wife.
Okay.
From a female's perspective. So she was a bodybuilder as well. Is that correct?
She didn't start out that way. She actually, when we met, she was a barista at a coffee stand. She was smoking. She was drinking. She was doing all the unhealthy things. And I don't want to take claim for fixing that because she did it all on her own accord. But she definitely was not living a healthy lifestyle when we met.
So take us through what happened with her and how she transformed. And then I want to get into the female aspects of being on keto.
Yeah, so she was suffering from a lot of digestive issues. She had slow transit. She had a whole bunch of GI issues, and she was looking to just resolving that. She had multiple doctor's visits, and they kept prescribing her these really high glycemic index, really quickly absorbing, but pretty much just sugary diets. And I'm like, no, you're gonna get diabetes eating this stuff. Why don't you try keto? Because I'd been dabbling in it, shortly before meeting her, and lo and behold, she did, and that resolved her digestive issues, fixed that not overnight, but relatively quickly in the grand scheme of things. And she's been keto ever since then. And she got into weight training. She put on a ton of muscle and was able to just totally turn her health around, stop smoking, stop drinking, and then did a bodybuilding show, won first place with that. I proposed to her on stage of that bodybuilding show, and she has not competed since then, but she's a big proponent for the sport. She trains every single day. We just had a child 6 months ago, and she was training while she was 9 months pregnant. She was doing deep squats with the barbell on her back while she was 9 months pregnant. So she is definitely an advocate for eating healthy and living an active lifestyle.
Now, does she incorporate the brick? Because a lot of women would be afraid of eating that many calories.
Yeah, she incorporates the brick, whereas I'll eat a whole brick in a sitting. She may eat half a brick in a sitting. So she'll kind of partition it accordingly, but she's still eating north of 2,500 calories a day. I mean, she eats quite a bit of protein, quite a bit of dietary fats, also very low carbohydrate. But she is, I mean, it's kind of shocking how many calories healthy women are able to consume without any adverse effects. I mean, I have female clients that are consuming north of 3,000 calories, and they're still maintaining a very trim figure with a very healthy body composition. So this notion that women have to consume 800 calories a day is just not true.
And are those women, when you're talking about the ones that are eating 3,000 calories a day, when they first came to you, were they eating a lot less? And then it was more of the reverse dieting and ramping up the metabolism, ramping up the calories and seeing it escalate in that way?
Yeah, exactly. So I get a lot of female clients. Most of my clients are females, surprisingly, that are just chronically under eating. I think I'm one of there are a few people talking about the importance of reverse dieting. They're starting to become more, which is great, but it's not really a sexy topic to talk about reverse dieting. Most people come to me and they want to lose weight, and having a conversation around reverse dieting is a hard sell for me as a coach because I have to sit them down and say, look, you're not going to lose weight. You may actually gain some weight. We got to increase your intake as opposed to dropping your intake further. And it's going to be a very long game approach. But if you do this right, you're going to set yourself up for success for years to come. So if you have that long game mentality, you can kind of get them to understand why it is that we're going about this reverse dieting approach in the first place. But definitely a long game philosophy. You can't have this, really quick minded thinking because reverse dieting takes time. Eating, I mean, a good rule of thumb is to spend at least 3 times as much time in a maintenance or surplus than you do in a deficit. So for people that have been just chronically under eating, it's going to take some time to repair the damage that's been done.
And how fast do you increase the caloric intake? If you've got a woman who comes to you and she says, I want to lose weight, but I'm eating 1,000 calories a day, take me from here.
I'll normally increase it very slowly. And I've had some clients that will actually see a drop in weight as we increase calories. And there could be a host of factors as to what that is. Maybe they weren't tracking their intake accurately to begin with. Who knows? But there are definitely some benefits that they'll notice apart from the scale pretty soon. Like they'll notice more energy. They'll notice more better quality sleep, better recovery. There's just a host of benefits that come from simply fueling your body appropriately. Like if you're chronically underfed and your body's constantly in the sympathetic nervous system to the point where you're stressed, you're anxious, you're not sleeping properly, you're not recovering from your training, you have no energy, and you're living on caffeine, it's just not a good place to be. Whereas if you can increase that intake to a healthier, more sustainable level, you're able to return to that parasympathetic state and actually live a more healthy, fulfilled life.
You touched on sleep, which is just, people just don't give it the attention that it needs. And they think that they can just wake up at 4 and go work out and lose their weight and build the muscle and deprive themselves of the sleep. So let's talk about the importance of sleep when it comes to weight training.
Yeah, sleep is crucial. And I'm honestly not the best spokesperson for sleep because I've been the type that burns the candle at both ends throughout many chapters of my life, especially with starting the business. And I wouldn't really do it any differently, but I've definitely learned that sleep is key. And I'm very protective of my sleep now. Like I'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, but I'm also the first to say I go to bed at 8. So I'm certainly not staying up doing these late night parties anymore because I really want to protect that sleep. I mean, sleep is very, very important. And I don't know. I feel like when I was in college, I could get away with out sleeping and it not really bother me. But now if I don't get my quality sleep, I can certainly feel it the next day.
Yeah, my aura ring tells me that I've got to make sure that I'm prioritizing my sleep. And now that
Yeah.
you're a new dad, if I can give you a piece of unsolicited parenting advice, put the baby on a schedule because your sleep and the baby's sleep is paramount, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm sure you have a new relationship with sleep with that new baby in the house.
Yeah, he's honestly been a pretty easy keeper. He's teething right now, we think. So that's kind of interrupted his sleep a bit more than normal. But he's usually pretty good about taking his naps and sleeping throughout the majority of the night. So he's been a pretty easy keeper as far as that's concerned.
So back to Crystal. Now that she has had the baby and I'm assuming she's continuing to eat a low carb ketogenic diet. Have you seen her recover quicker than most moms from the pregnancy, from, getting back into, a more active lifestyle? Not that she wasn't active during her pregnancy, which is amazing, but you know what I mean, as far as getting also the milk production and just the health of her through that stage of her life.
Yeah, she's been an absolute rock star. I mean, she was like her whole life's endeavor and passion has been to be the very best mom that she could be. So she was on top of her nutrition long before she ever even got pregnant. She was taking all the right prenatal vitamins. She was trying to do everything she could to set herself up for success throughout the pregnancy and beyond. And she was training up until having the baby. And we had to have an emergency C-section, which was certainly not in the plans, but that's how things panned out. Totally unrelated to nutrition or anything like that. Just the play of the cards, I guess. But her recovery post-surgery was very, very quickly. I mean, she was able to, she did not train hard with weights, within a few weeks of that. But I forget what the actual start date back into the gym was, but it was not very much time at all. And here we are now 6 months post birth. And I think she's within like 5 pounds of what her weight was pre-pregnancy. So, and then she was doing 155 on squats today without any issues. So she's definitely back at the gym going hard and heavy with that.
And how is she incorporating intermittent fasting, or is she at all through this process?
She doesn't do a whole lot of intermittent fasting simply because of the milk production. So she could probably tolerate to do intermittent fasting to an extent and it be fine. But she likes to consume food relatively early in the day. So she'll typically we'll have a coffee in the morning. She does decaf because she is nursing. And then she'll have her first meal usually pretty early. There'll be days that get away from us. She'll be busy and she won't have her first meal until later. So there'll be some unintentional intermittent fasting days, but she's typically eating usually 2 or 3 times a day as well, but starting earlier in the day than I do. And her milk production has been totally fine from the very onset. I mean, milk production has been totally fine without carbohydrates at all. We kept getting all this pushback from people saying you have to have carbs throughout the pregnancy. You have to have carbs as she's lactating. And that's just not been the case at all.
Now, when I was pregnant, they told me that I needed to eat all day long and X amount of calories and a whole bunch of carbohydrates, and that I needed to stop working out at, I think it was 6 months. I ran until I was uncomfortable, and I lifted weights through the whole process. And but this was also, I was eating the wrong foods because
Right.
this was before I knew anything about keto or low carb. And just a story, as far I mentioned before we got on, that I had PCOS, and no doctor ever said anything about diet. They
Hmm.
just thought it was genetic. As soon as I went keto, that PCOS went away. And I'm thinking to myself, well, shoot, I wish I wanted a fourth kid because I could get pregnant a lot easier now that I'm on a ketogenic low carb diet, and just the benefits in the hormonal cascade. So because we've just got a few minutes left, I want to touch on the hormonal benefits of keto, especially when we're looking at the gym and growth, testosterone, growth hormone, those hormones.
Yeah. So from my perspective as a male bodybuilder, a lot of people, when they're dieting down for a show, like many of my fellow competitors, they'll drop fat as a macronutrient, and they'll drop that to the tune of oftentimes 30 or 40 grams a day, which is just incredibly low. Like my fat never drops below 100 grams a day. And when you look at cholesterol, for instance, cholesterol is the precursor to testosterone. You obviously want to have ample testosterone when in a deficit from a muscle preservation standpoint, but also from an energy standpoint and a fat loss standpoint. And if you're consuming only 30 grams of total dietary fat, you're going to see a massive downward trend in your healthy hormone levels. I also see a downward trend by being in an extreme deficit for that finite period of time, but it's not nearly as significant as it was before I started doing the ketogenic diet. Now, since my fat stays relatively high throughout the prep, I don't have near that downward shift in hormones. So I have more energy. I don't have just any of the issues that accompany incredibly low testosterone levels. So that I think is one of the main benefits. And it goes both ways for both male and female. Like if you're consuming 30 grams of total dietary fats a day, whether you're a male or a female, you're going to see a massive downward shift in your healthy hormone levels.
Yeah, I know. I noticed that a lot of people that are on statin drugs for their cholesterol are also on Viagra
Hmm.
because it's definitely affecting their testosterone. And women have this misnomer that we're not supposed to have testosterone. We actually have more testosterone than estrogen. We just don't have as much as men. So we need that testosterone, and testosterone feels good.
Yeah.
You've got all the guys at the gym that are jacked, and they're using steroids, they're using they're getting the synthetic injections of testosterone. What are the side effects? What are they missing? Yes, they look good on the outside, but what are they missing? Because they're not doing the hard work, right? They're not doing the diet. And what are those side effects?
Yeah. So there are a lot of people, there are a lot of bodybuilders. I mean, anybody that's really competing at the IFBB level in bodybuilding, like they're taking performance enhancing drugs. And I don't really have anything against them. I mean, to each their own. I compete in natural federations that test for that. And at that level, they're most certainly putting in the work. They just have that performance enhancing drug in accompaniment to that work. And I'm never going to be as big as they are. And I'm fine with that. For me, my endeavors have always been around health and longevity. Like I want to be the very best that I can naturally and do so for as long as I can sustain this lifestyle. And when you abuse those performance enhancing drugs, those exogenous hormones, your body's own natural production begins to dwindle because it doesn't have to produce that naturally because you're supplementing with it exogenously. So a lot of these people that are taking and abusing this and not cycling off of it properly and just taking way too much in general, their body's own natural production of it has pretty much dwindled down to nothing. I mean, there are many professional level bodybuilders that have the testosterone, concentration of a 7-year-old female. Like that's not what you want to do as a male. So making sure that you're not sacrificing your body's own natural production is key in my book. And I feel like natural bodybuilding certainly paves the way for doing that in a healthy manner. So for me, I'm a big advocate of just honestly seeing what my body's capable of in a complete natural state.
Right. And whether you're talking about keto or non-keto diets, just now in general, estrogen dominance has become a huge issue because of all the toxicity in our world, the GMOs on the food supply. And if you have too much estrogen in your body, female or male, that testosterone is going to be blocked, not usable. You could have testosterone in the 8 to 8 to 900 level, but then you've got the estrogens or the SHBG binding up that usable testosterone and not giving you that benefit. So that's also where I recommend a lot of detoxing and making sure that you're eating the good foods and not just the processed foods that, even though they're low carb, right? So I wanted to touch on that. What are you working on, Robert? What are you working on now? And also, can you tell people where they can find the brick?
Yeah. So right now, my big endeavor is I'm building out an online course that basically acts as a companion course to the book that I wrote and published earlier this year, Ketogenic Bodybuilding. And this is basically like a video-led tutorial that takes people through the entire process: how to manipulate your macros, how to calculate your macronutrient intake, how to lose body fat and preserve and build muscle tissue in the most optimal manner possible via the ketogenic approach. So that has been a labor of love. I have no idea when that's going to be published, hopefully early next year, but it's just growing larger and larger with every day that passes, it seems. So that's my current project. And then that, of course, also we have that 6-month-old baby, learning how to best parent him and taking one day at a time has been my other big project from a personal standpoint. But finding me, it's everything Keto Savage, ketosavage.com, Keto Savage on social, and then the Keto Brick, ketobrick.com, and Keto Brick on social.
Amazing. I'm so excited for your growing family. I'm just having memories of my kids at that age. The 5-6 month age was my favorite because they were happy, they were sleeping, but they didn't know how to say no yet. So get ready. I got pregnant the second time when I had my first was 18 months old. And I thought, oh my God, what did I do? I love all of my kids, but I did not like them when they were 18 months old because they know how to say no and they knew how to start moving, and you couldn't reason with them. But no, I'm super excited for you. That's really fun. So
yeah, we're stoked. It's gonna be great. We're just taking it one step at a time for sure.
Yeah. What an opportunity. Oh gosh, that's, life is so magical. And when you see those little things, those little angels, you really do look at your health in a whole nother manner. Right. And, it's such a blessing that you know what you know, because when my kids were young, I was microwaving corn dogs for them. I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about nutrition. And thank goodness they have me now to reverse the damage that I did when I was pregnant with them and when they were babies. So
yeah, hopefully he's keen to take my words of wisdom when it comes to nutrition and doesn't want to just totally do the opposite despite me. We'll see how that pans out.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for coming on, Robert. And thank you everyone else for joining us today. If I can help you with your health, you can contact me directly through sarabantahealth.com. I'm happy to put together a protocol for you. And join the free group coaching on Telegram with the link below. I teach you on a daily basis with tips and tools to enhance your health. You will be a part of a like-minded group to support you on your journey, in addition to truly taking control of your health. If you like what you heard today, please hit the subscribe button and share with a few of your friends who may need my help. And you can join us every Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific time and Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific time live, and use coupon WELCOME10 for 10% off site-wide. Thanks again for joining us here on Accelerated Health Radio and TV, and have a great week. Thanks, Robert.